Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about what I think are the top 5 loadouts for Warzone right now. I'm going to try to be brief and not cover everything, because if I cover everything, this would be like a 45-minute long video and nobody wants that. So I'm going to go through first the top ARs and then the top SMGs, and then I'll talk about how I think they pair well together for loadouts, as well as like the top sniper loadouts. So I might do 1 or 2 sniper loadouts, I'm not sure, as well as what I would pair with those snipers. So we'll get into it here in a second, but as always, if you like the content, drop us a sub, comment, and like, and that will really help us out with the algorithm, help the channel grow, help the website stay up to date. So let's jump into it, and we will talk about assault rifles first. All right, so real quickly, I want to talk about how I'm going to be comparing these weapons in terms of damage per second. So we're going to use damage per second for this comparison because I feel like most people are playing trios and quads. So I'd say a lot of the fights, you're going to be fighting people that are not full plate. If you're playing solos and duos, then definitely you should look at TTKs. You should still look at TTKs for trios and quads as well, but I think DPS is maybe a more reliable average measure of how a gun's going to perform in Warzone, just because people aren't always going to be at those quantized health values. They're not always going to be exactly 250 health or 200 health, especially when your team is shooting at someone else hits one bullet, it completely throws off TTKs. So overall, I think DPS is probably just a safer way to measure weapons in terms of their average damage output, especially now that we have tempered. So we have this new value at 175 health, which I haven't added to the website yet. But overall, DPS gives you just a good estimate of how a gun's going to perform at any given health value. So that's what we're going to use for the video. I'm using my new advanced DPS calculator that's going to be coming as a premium feature in the future in this video. So what it is 10% headshot, 10% neck shot, 30% chest shot, 13% stomach shot, and 37% extremities. So that is 100% total. And those are percentages. Now that we have this new neck multiplier from my previous video, I think 10% is fair for that. The hitbox is a little bit smaller than the headshot, but it is closer to the chest, which is where most people are aiming. And these are percentages, again, that I've kind of pulled and estimated from Black Ops Cold War, because they actually give us these percentages in that game. So I'm going to be using those percentages for the DPS chart, and it leads to really, really good results. And I think it's a really good estimation of how these weapons are going to perform. So let's jump into the TTK charts. All right, so I've got what I think are basically the top 9 long range weapons in the game right now. So these are like your main weapon, main AR / LMG. You've got the Cold War AK in orange, the XM4 in magenta, the EM2 in cyan, the light green is the C58. This off blue color is the Farah. Lighter pink color is the Krig. Brown is QBZ. I don't even know what to call this color, but like a darker green is the Stoner 63. And then we're going to call the MG82 a different green. I'll toggle them on and off as I'm talking about them so you can see. So let's start at the top. The AK is pretty much in the middle of the pack in terms of DPS. One thing I want to mention before we start, you can see the Stoner and the MG82 up at the top in terms of DPS. One thing about DPS is you can't really include open bolt delay, but open bolt delay is really not super important for these long range guns. Most of the time, people are going to be not even knowing that you're going to shoot before you shoot, so the time they have to react isn't really going to be any different, and DPS is an accurate measure of that, even without including open bolt delay. So that's why they look a little bit artificially inflated compared to the TTK charts if you include open bolt delay on TTK charts. It's just not possible to include that in DPS charts because of how DPS is calculated. So keep that in mind as we talk about this. But as far as ARs go, the AK is a little bit higher than most. It's up towards the EM2, the Farah, and the XM4 in the first damage drop off, and then out in the second drop off, it's kind of, again, same sort of area with those same guns. So it's kind of middle of the pack. It has pretty strong recoil still. A lot of people have messaged me saying they think the recoil got buffed. I don't really think that's the case. I've used it and I've measured it, and it seems to be basically the same to me. It's usable at range. It was usable at range before with the barrel changes, but I think there are some better options. So I don't think the Cold War AK is going to make the list for the top long range ARs or main ARs. XM4 is this magenta color. You can see with this neck shot, this was one of the big revelations from my previous video. XM4 neck shot is exactly the same as a headshot, has a 100% neck shot multiplier compared to headshot, so that's huge. That ups the DPS a lot. And you can see that as far as ARs go, the XM4 up close has the highest DPS output, and then at range, it also, again, has the highest DPS output by just a tiny bit over the Farah. Literally negligible difference, so really it's tied with the Farah. And then the Farah actually has a little bit more range, so it has about 5 meters more range. And the Farah also has less visual recoil. But for some reason, I just can't hit shots with the Farah. I don't know why that is. That's why I don't talk about it that much. Something just feels weird about it to me, and I just can't figure it out. I don't like the Farah that much. But it is a great gun. If it works for you, it is a fantastic gun in terms of actual numbers. EM2 is the cyan line that I'm toggling on and off. It has pretty good TTKs again. It fits in with this upper pack of faster killing but a little harder to control weapons. Has the same damage range as the AK at 26 meters, and then slightly faster TTKs than the AK everywhere. So it's basically just a little bit better AK in my opinion. I do want to talk about something when we get into builds that I really like about the EM2, but I'll mention that when we actually get into the recommended builds. C58 is down a little lower now, especially in the first damage drop off than it used to be after these nerfs, but it's still good. Again, these are all really good weapons, so I'm going to give you what my personal top 5 loadouts are, but yours might be a little bit different if certain guns feel better. But I'm just giving my opinion in this video, basically based on numbers and how they feel to me. So for me, C58 doesn't feel that good, and the DPS numbers are a little lower than some of the other guns, so that's not going to make my list, but I know that a lot of controller players love it. I would say that if you're a controller player and you love the C58, try the EM2. It's basically going to be a faster killing C58 at this point. It feels very similar, but we'll talk about that more when we get into loadouts. Farah, we already kind of talked about. It's basically the same as the XM4 with a little bit more range. Krig. So Krig is this lighter pink line, and it has worse TTKs. It has a good next shot multiplier, so that's good. That helps with the DPS. But even with that next shot multiplier, the QBZ does not have a next shot multiplier. Even with that, the QBZ kills a little bit faster at range. The QBZ is this brown line. So QBZ and Krig are very similar. They are easy to control, accurate, long range guns. So it's hard to declare a winner here. The Krig's a little faster than the QBZ in the first range and gets 3 meters extra damage range, and then negligibly slower in terms of DPS out at range. For me, I can control the Krig a lot better. I don't know why that is, but the Krig just feels easier for me to control, so it's going to be one of my recommendations over the QBZ. And then we have these two LMGs, the Stoner and the MG82. They have fantastic DPS. The MG82 has ridiculous DPS. I mean, you can see this green line that I'm toggling on and off is just quite a bit faster than everything else on the chart. And the recoil is perfectly vertical with no horizontal bounce. There's a ton of vertical recoil, but there's no horizontal bounce, and you can learn it and really fry with this thing out to 100, 125 meters. It can be really, really good. So I think it's a great option. The other really good LMG right now is the Stoner. Stoner, again, slightly worse DPS than the MG82 in that first range, but it has way more range. It goes out to 40 meters, whereas the MG82 only goes out to 22 meters. So from 22 out to 40, the Stoner actually kills faster than the MG82, and then after that, the Stoner has the drop off down to 350 DPS, which is still tied with the fastest ARs. So it still kills really fast out at range and much faster than the ARs. Basically, from mid 20 meters out to 40 meters, it kills way faster. So I think the Stoner is also a fantastic option right now. It's much easier to use in terms of recoil than the MG82. It's really bouncy, but the actual recoil that's there is not that bad. It's mostly just visual. So I think Stoner and MG82 are both top tier right now. So I'm going to focus on XM4, EM2, Krig, Stoner, and MG82 in my builds. All right, I'm going to go really quickly through the SMGs because there's not much to talk about right now. There's some really big standouts, in my opinion, over other guns. So we've got the OTS in orange, Tech 9 with full auto repeater in magenta, Mac 10 in cyan, and then green is the Modern Warfare MP5 with 10 millimeter mags. I'm going to also add the AK-74U because it has this nice neck multiplier because he does 43 damage to the neck. It's a more stable, slower gun, so we'll add that as well just so we have that on here. So now the AK-74U is this darker blue color. You can see that has pretty good DPS. So going through this, OTS is absolutely dominant in that first damage range. You can see the orange line up here is even quite a bit faster than those 10 millimeter rounds that I just covered in my recent MP5 video. It has a 100% neck shot multiplier. Again, this is completely absurd. The gun was already great without that. We already knew that it was dominant without that. I don't know why it has that. I'm sure that'll get changed. None of the other SMGs hardly even have neck multipliers. So it's really weird that the OTS neck multiplier was 100% of headshot damage. So that raises its DPS even more when it already had the best DPS and TTKs before. So Modern Warfare MP5 with 10 millimeter would be an okay option for solos, maybe duos, but really, Me personally, I'm going to use the OTS over that. But if you love the MP5, it's still okay. Still probably a little better for hipfire builds. And it has a little bit more range, but not much. You can also extend the range of the OTS out with attachments. So overall, up close melt machine, OTS. So you're going to want to use that with more aggressive ARs. So your AR is more effective up close. We'll talk about that more in builds. Tech 9 is a longer range, faster killing gun out at range than the OTS. So I've talked about this before, but there's like two categories of SMGs in my mind. There's the up close melt machines, and then there's the ones that kind of extend their damage range out but have worse TTKs up close. But you still get the benefits of the SMG mobility and sprint to fire time and things like that. So like the MAC 10, AK-74U, and Tech 9 all kind of fit in that second category where they are slower to kill, but they have much longer damage range. You can see that. It's exactly what I'm saying right here. Slower damage per second by a significant amount over the MP5 and the OTS, but almost double the damage range. And then even out past that last damage range, you can see the Tech 9 still has very, very good DPS, maintains its DPS very well all the way out to infinity because it only has 1 damage drop off. So as far as these longer range SMGs, the MAC 10 is going to have the best recoil of the group, probably followed by the AK-74U and then followed by the Tech 9. Tech 9 has the worst recoil but the best damage per second. MAC 10 also looks a little better than it actually is here because, again, the DPS chart does not include any open bolt delay, and the MAC 10 has that 50-ish millisecond open bolt delay. So it is actually a little slower to kill up close. I think open bolt delay is much more important up close than it is at range, just because most of the time if you're in a fight up close, they know you're there, they hear your footsteps. So I think it should be more included up close in SMG considerations. So really, I think the MAC 10 is kind of a little bit out of the picture now when we have the AK-74U and the Tech 9. The one huge benefit of the MAC 10 still is it has the best mobility in the game, tied with the OTS and tied with the Milano. That's something else I didn't mention. The OTS has these insane DPS numbers, and it has the fastest mobility in the game. So if you want that, the MAC 10 is still a great option. AK-74U has more manageable recoil than the Tech 9, but worse damage per second. But I think it's a decent sniper support. So of these three, I'm going to recommend OTS and usually Tech 9. If you really want to go suppressed for that Type 2 SMG, then probably I would recommend AK-74U for me personally, just because I prefer better damage per second over those mobility benefits of the MAC 10. So those are my top SMGs, and we will use those in the loadouts. All right, I'm going to start with the Krig. I think the Krig is basically the best option for most people in Verdansk right now. It's just so ridiculously accurate with still really good DPS values. So there's two ways to build this. I'm going to go through both of them really quickly. So the more long range, so this loadout's called long range Krig plus long range SMG. Because the Krig is built for long range and doesn't have great damage per second up close, we want an SMG that can fulfill a little bit more of an all-round role, that can reach out a little bit more and be a little bit more effective out to like 20 meters. So instead of like an OTS with maximum melt potential up close, we're going to use the Tech 9 with the slower Krig. So I've got Agency, Blast Barrel for the Krig, Field Agent, Stenag 60 round, and Axial 3X. This is a standard long range build for the Krig. But again, because we're using a mil-spec barrel and a 60 round mag, this is going to be a little slower to ADS than some other options. So to pair with that, we do the Tech 9. This is a little longer range Tech 9 again. Full auto repeater makes the gun really good. Field Agent foregrip, just because it has a lot of recoil. Tiger Team Spotlight, this counteracts the slowdown in movement speed with the Field Agent foregrip and gives you a little bit extra regular movement speed. I meant it counteracts the ADS movement speed penalty of the Field Agent grip, the firing ADS movement speed. So you get extra mobility all around with the Tiger Team. You're going to move faster than even if you didn't have a Field Agent and you didn't have a Tiger Team with both of these attached. 48 round fast mag. Again, this Tech 9 has small damage for mag. So it's kind of important to have the fast mag in my opinion, and it doesn't hurt ADS times that bad. And then optic, again, if you're a console player, you can take the optic off and potentially put a barrel on. Or not really a console player, but a controller player, because aim assist will help you when you can't see the target. Whereas mouse and key player, I feel like I have to have an optic even when the iron sights are decent. So this will be my recommended build there. And then for the aggressive Krig, so I call this fast Krig plus close range SMG. So I've replaced the barrel with the Ranger barrel because this no longer has the movement speed penalties. It doesn't have the ADS penalty. All it does is hurt your aimed walking movement speed and hip fire, but gives you great bullet velocity and a little bit of recoil control help. So this is going to be a more aggressive Krig, faster to ADS. We've also replaced the 60 round mag with the 45 round mag. Again, this dramatically helps your ADS times. So this is a quick ADS in Krig, and it's much more effective up close. So we don't need to extend out that damage range with the SMG. So we can go with the up close melt machine SMG in this case, which is the OTS. So Grew Suppressor, Bruiser Grip, for mobility and hipfire. Fast mag, again, this has small damage per mag, and the fast mag reloads super, super fast and doesn't hurt ADS times that much. 5 milliwatt sight for hipfire. If you don't use hipfire, then you can replace this with probably a Tiger team and just get better mobility. Microflex LED again, because I like to have an optic. If you're going for max mobility, you can just take the optic off and switch to KGB skeletal stock. This will give you ridiculous mobility. This is an awesome build, especially for controller, because you're using irons, like I talked about before. But those are my two Krig builds, both super, super good. Probably two of the best builds in the game right now. All right, so next up is going to be the XM4. As we showed with the DPS charts, the XM4 of the ARs now has pretty much the highest DPS, given those shot location percentages. So I think it's a great option. It has really good DPS up close. So same logic I used for the Krig, because it has really good DPS up close. We can actually build it with the task force and the 60 round mag, even though that slows down ADS, because the better TTKs and better DPS of the XM4 are going to make up for that compared to the Krig and the Krig fast build. So I would recommend building it like this. You could switch to those barrels I talked about with the Krig as well if you want it to be faster, but the XM4 has quite a bit of recoil, so I want to do everything I can to help with the recoil. And I think you can get away, like I just was talking about, with slower ADS times. So I'm going to pair this with the OTS. I think these two go extremely well together. This is a fantastic loadout, both for Verdansk and Rebirth. This is a Verdansk video, but this would also work extremely well on Rebirth. I don't have much to say about the OTS. It's exactly the same as the Krig, so if you want to go back and check those out, all the logic's the same there. I want to give an honorable mention to the EM2. It has very good DPS across the board, and it feels basically just like a better C58 at this point. This is kind of a unique build that I wanted to highlight here that I actually really, really like. It uses the default optic. The default optic is actually really nice because it feels a lot like the SUSAT in terms of how the SUSAT reduces that visual bounce. I think that's why the ADS times are so bad with the default gun, is because it is basically a SUSAT in terms of how much it helps with visual recoil. So this is a fantastic build. We use the Ranger instead of Task Force because the ADS times are pretty bad on this gun, especially with that default optic. So we use Ranger, Agency, Field Agent, 40 round mag. It shoots slow, so 40 round mag actually has a lot of damage per mag. And then Airborne Elastic again to help with that optics ADS time. I think it's actually worth it to run Airborne Elastic with the default optic over like a 3x with no. Obviously, if you use a 3x, you can't use the Airborne Elastic because you don't have that slot anymore. You only have 5 attachments. But I think the visual recoil help of this default optic is totally worth using the Airborne Elastic instead of running a 3x. You get similar ADS times, but much, much less visual recoil. So I'd give this a try, especially if you're a C58 lover. This feels insanely good to me. So MG82, as I talked about when we were going over the DPS, has ridiculously good TTKs and DPS. It's an absolute melt machine, and the recoil is perfectly vertical with no horizontal bounce at all. Very, very little visual recoil. If you want to master a gun and have better TTKs than everybody else out there, this is the gun to try to use. Hard to use, but the TTKs make it worth it, in my opinion. It's a lot of fun. I'd give this a try. This is my recommended build. Because it has so much recoil, we do use Task Force, even though it slows the gun down even more. Field Agent, again, for recoil. Fast mag has no penalties. It just has a 100 round mag, and you reload a lot faster. So I think it's worth it to use the fast mag. Agency Suppressor, always, just for these long range builds. And then Axial. This is a great build for the MG82. As far as how to pair this with an SMG, I think you could use either the really aggressive OTS or the less aggressive MAC-10, Tech-9, or AK-74U. Because this has such good TTKs, even though it's slow mobility and slow ADS times, you can make up for the fact that it has those slow numbers there with the fact that it kills people so fast up close. So you could get away with using an OTS with this for sure. But it's up to you. Maybe try it out, see which SMG feels the best to go with the MG82 to you. Basically, everything I said about the MG82 is true for the Stoner as well. I think these are both top tier picks. The Stoner is just a lot easier to control at range. You might even be able to get away with using the 4x sight, which, if you remember, back in the M16 days, that Axial 3x basically having sniper scope zoom was actually huge. It made the gun, that was a big part of what made the M16 so good, is that it had manageable recoil and you got tons and tons of zoom. So if you can get away with the 4x, I'd say try it on the Krig, try it on the Stoner. Not going to be very good on the XM4 just because there's too much recoil, and I really don't think you should probably use it on the EM2 either, just because recoil again. But this is my recommended Stoner build. It has Quite a bit of bounce, so I like to use Task Force and Field Agent Grip just to help with that horizontal recoil as much as possible. Agency Suppressor always. 120 round mag, so this is an interesting one. It has no penalties. It says it hurts your reload quickness, but I've measured all the stoner stats. They're all up on the website, and it didn't affect reload time at all. And the default mag is only 75, so you get an extra 45 bullets when you go with the 120 round mag, and it doesn't penalize you in any way. Fast mag, since your default mag is only 75 rounds, I don't think it's worth using the fast mag. It only helps by like, I don't know, like 0.6 seconds or something like that. So really, I think 120 round mag is the way to go on the stoner, just so you don't hurt those ADS times. The 120 round speed mag only hurts your ADS times by about 33 milliseconds, so that's not too bad. But overall, I generally run the 120 round mag. I feel like that fits in really well with the stoner. This is a great gun. This is a top tier gun right now. As far as how it pairs with SMGs, again, same story as the MG82. I feel like you can get away with either the OTS, the Tech 9, Mac 10, or the AK-74U. I think they're all great choices. So just try them out, see which one feels best to you. Most likely, I'd usually recommend the OTS for both the MG82 and the stoner, just because the OTS is just so overpoweringly good right now that I think a lot more people should be using it. All right, I think that was 5 loadouts. I changed my mind partway through the video, and I'm not going to cover snipers in this video. I'll do that in another video where I talk about best sniper loadouts. Spoiler: the Swiss is the best sniper right now for sure for like aggressive play and mid-range play. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. I like to try to balance my loadouts so I'm really effective at all ranges. That's why I kind of think about how much range my SMGs have compared to how fast my long range guns ADS and how fast my long range guns kill. I try to balance all that out. So I hope you found it insightful and useful. I hope you have a good day. I'll see you guys all in the next video, which will be hopefully out tomorrow.